Have you ever walked into a room and felt, without anyone saying a word, that you didn't belong there? It's a strange kind of ache, isn't it? Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet sting that settles into your chest as eyes linger too long, or not at all. Seniors know that feeling better than most. After all you've lived, all you've survived, all you've contributed, to be treated as if you're invisible? Or worse, like you're in the way? It never stops hurting. And that's what makes what happened to her so unsettling. A black woman walking into a restaurant on a gentle Tuesday afternoon, expecting nothing more than a warm meal, and instead stepping straight into a storm she never caused. A storm she didn't deserve. But the most heartbreaking part wasn't the hostility, or even the humiliation that followed. No. It was how familiar the moment felt, the kind of quiet disrespect so many seniors have felt for years, just in different ways. But here's the part no one in that restaurant could have predicted. While everyone else stared with judgment, or discomfort, or silence, one man, a man sitting in the far corner, hidden behind a pair of reading glasses and a half-finished cup of coffee, didn't judge her at all. He recognized her. Not her face. Not her clothes. Her voice. A voice he hadn't heard since he was a frightened little boy, sitting at a worn-out school desk, praying someone, anyone, would notice him. And he realized, with a chill that climbed straight up his spine, the woman being pushed out of that restaurant was the same woman who once pulled him out of darkness. The restaurant wasn't fancy enough to intimidate, but polished enough to make people sit a little straighter. Soft jazz played in the background. Forks clicked gently. Conversation stayed tidy and respectable. It was the kind of place where people pretended they had never made mistakes. She had only been waiting 10 minutes. Not long enough to cause fuss, but long enough for the host to decide she had waited too long. One staff member walked past her, glaring as if she were in the way. Another stepped around her with exaggerated caution, as though her presence created a problem no one wanted to name. She stayed composed, her hands folded gently, her breathing even, her bracelet glinting softly under the lights. Then the moment snapped. A manager approached, his tone clipped before he even spoke. "May I help you? I'm just waiting to be seated." He didn't hide the skepticism. "Do you plan on dining here?" The question hit like a slap. Softly delivered, but deeply cutting. A few diners looked up, sensing a shift. A couple put down their forks. Others pretended not to hear. That old, uncomfortable silence seniors know too well. When people decide staying quiet feels safer than doing what's right. "Yes," she answered, keeping her voice steady. He crossed his arms. "We are not accepting walk-ins today." She gestured politely toward the empty tables. "I don't mind waiting." His voice rose just enough to draw attention. "I don't think this is the right place for you." There it was. The line. The moment everything inside her went still. A hush fell over the room. A few phones subtly tilted upward, ready to record, because people are always brave when the threat is on someone else. But in the back corner? One person wasn't recording. He wasn't gasping. He wasn't staring. He was remembering. Because the man watching, the one who hadn't said a word yet, knew that tone. That dismissive cruelty. He had lived through it as a child. And the woman being insulted? She was the one who once defended him. When the black woman entered, she didn't demand attention. She didn't scan the room with attitude or entitlement. She simply stepped in with the kind of quiet dignity that comes from years of holding yourself together, even when the world tried to pull you apart. She adjusted a simple silver bracelet on her wrist before approaching the host stand. Not just any bracelet, her mother's. The way she touched it told a whole story. One seniors would feel instantly: memory, respect, grounding. "Good afternoon," she said politely. Not soft. Not loud. Just warm. The host barely lifted her eyes. "Do you have a reservation?" A question wrapped in politeness, but sharpened with something else. Something she'd heard before. "No, but I was hoping. We're full." Quick. Dismissive. Mechanical. Even though 6 empty tables sat in plain view. She didn't protest. She simply offered a patient smile, the kind you wear when you're tired of proving you're harmless. "I can wait." The host hesitated. Looked her up and down. Then sighed. "Fine." A couple nearby exchanged glances. A whisper. A small shake of the head. Nothing overt. Nothing loud. But enough for the air to shift. Seniors know that kind of shift, subtle, but unmistakable. And at the corner table, that one man kept watching. Not judging. Not whispering. Just quietly observing, as something in his chest tightened. A memory flickered. A voice from decades ago echoing faintly. Something in him already knew. This wasn't going to end quietly. He hadn't planned to be there that day. He'd only stepped in for a quiet lunch, a brief escape from a job filled with difficult decisions. But when he heard her voice, that gentle steadiness, even while being mistreated, something inside him stirred. A memory long buried under adulthood, responsibility, and years of growing older. At first, he thought he imagined it. But then she spoke again, trying to explain herself with that familiar softness she used on frightened children decades ago. And that's when it hit him. Hard. His fork froze midway to his mouth. His heartbeat slowed. The restaurant noise faded until all he could hear was her voice, the same voice that once read stories to him during recess because no one else would sit with him. The same voice that told him he wasn't stupid, even when his teachers lost patience. The same voice that taught him how to pronounce his own name with pride after years of bullies shortening it into something mockable. He looked up slowly, and there she was. Older now. Tired around the eyes. But unmistakably her. His breath caught when he saw the silver bracelet. He remembered it. She used to twist that same bracelet when thinking, right before she knelt beside his desk to encourage him. A tremble ran through him. Not fear. Something deeper. Something like grief mixed with gratitude. And yet, he didn't stand. Not yet. Because the trauma of his childhood taught him something. Timing is everything. Standing up too early changes nothing. Standing up at the right moment can change everything. So he waited. Watching. Listening. Feeling the weight of who she once was. And who he had become because of her. He knew what he had to do, but only after one more line crossed. It started as a flicker in his memory, then sharpened into a moment so painfully clear it felt like yesterday. He was 8 years old again, small, scrawny, living in a house where shouting traveled through walls like smoke. School had been no refuge. He was the kid other kids avoided. Quiet. Nervous. Cheap shoes. Stuttering when pressured. And then came the day that changed everything. He remembered sitting alone during lunch, tracing circles in the condensation on his milk carton, trying to disappear. A group of boys approached and began mocking him, his stutter, his hammer-down clothes, the way he held his pencil. It was loud. Cruel. The kind of bullying that claws at a child's ribs. And then, this same woman, younger, vibrant, wearing that same silver bracelet, walked right up to them. She didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She did something far more powerful. She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder and said, "Come on, sweetheart. Sit with me." 3 simple words that felt like rescue. She didn't just pull him out of the moment, she gave him a place. A voice. A sense of worth he had never felt before. She once told him, "One day, you'll grow into a man who stands tall. And when the time comes, you'll know exactly how to use your voice." He lived by that. Carried it. Became who he became because of it. And now, watching her being treated like nothing, his jaw tightened. His fingers curled. His chest burned with the painful realization. The woman who once saved him from humiliation was now enduring it herself. And he could not, would not, remain that shy boy who stayed silent. Not this time. By now the restaurant buzz had shifted into something uncomfortable. Diners exchanged uneasy glances. A woman whispered, "This doesn't feel right." A man cleared his throat, as if his conscience wanted to speak but his mouth refused. Even the server holding a tray of lemonades hesitated mid-step, unsure whether to continue pretending everything was normal. But the manager didn't hesitate. He doubled down. "I'm asking you to leave," he said loudly enough for half the room to hear. "We reserve the right to refuse service." The woman's shoulders dipped, not in defeat, but in the exhausted acceptance of someone who has fought too many of these battles in her life. She touched her mother's bracelet again. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "I've done nothing wrong." And that was it. The final line. The moment everything inside the man at the corner table snapped into purpose. A server passing by paused and murmured, "Someone should say something." That was the cue. He pushed back his chair, slowly, deliberately, and the sound of its legs scraping against the floor cut through the room like a warning bell. Conversations died instantly. All eyes turned. A ripple of curiosity spread, the kind seniors feel right before something meaningful happens. He stood tall, his presence commanding without trying. His gaze fixed firmly on the manager. "Before she goes anywhere," he said, voice steady and unmistakably authoritative, "I have a question." The manager blinked. "Sir, this doesn't concern." "Oh, I promise you," he interrupted, "it concerns me more than you can imagine." A low tension rolled across the restaurant. People leaned in. Something in the air shifted, the kind of shift that comes right before the truth demands to be heard. The manager stiffened. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not so calmly, so confidently. "Sir, this is a private matter between the restaurant and the customer," he insisted. The man didn't blink. "Not when discrimination is involved." A quiet gasp rippled from table to table. Even the host swallowed hard, suddenly aware that this confrontation was no longer simple. The manager tried recovering. "Now see here, we have policies." "Policies," the man repeated slowly. "Then you won't mind explaining them, under oath." The room froze. Phones lifted again, not secretly this time, but openly. The manager frowned. Oath? Who do you think you are? The man reached into his jacket, pulled out a slim black wallet, and flipped it open. Not dramatically. Not with bravado. Just enough for everyone nearby to see the gold emblem and the government seal. I'm Daniel Foster, he said quietly. District Attorney for this county. A wave of shock swept the room. A woman gasped. A man almost dropped his fork. Even the staff paled as the weight of his words settled across the restaurant. And before you say anything else, he continued, let me make something perfectly clear. I am here today off duty, on personal time, but I am still a witness. He turned to the woman, his former teacher, though she still didn't recognize him. And I watched you refuse her service without cause. I watched you question whether she belonged here. And I watched you try to remove her, while several empty tables remained available. He faced the manager again. So the question becomes, should I handle this now, or on Monday morning when I file an official complaint? The manager's face drained of color. Now he understood exactly who he had challenged. The manager's bluster crumbled instantly. His shoulders sagged, his face tightened, and his eyes darted around as if searching for a way to reverse the last 10 minutes. But reality was already moving. Staff members exchanged nervous looks, a server retreated toward the kitchen. Even diners who had stayed silent now shifted uncomfortably, reminded that silence has consequences too. I think there's been a misunderstanding, the manager stammered. No, Daniel replied evenly. There hasn't. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. That was what made his words land like stone. I'm requesting the incident logs for today, Daniel continued. And I'll need the security footage preserved. Do not delete it. That would be obstruction. The host swallowed hard. Yes, sir. The manager tried to recover. Look, we can apologize. You will, Daniel said. But not to me. He gestured gently toward the woman. She was standing frozen, unsure whether to speak or disappear. Years of being told to stay quiet, stay calm, don't escalate, had worn grooves into her reactions. The manager approached her stiffly. I sincerely apologize if Daniel cut in softly. Apologize for what you did, not what she felt. The manager exhaled shakily. I'm sorry. I was wrong. The apology wasn't enough to erase the humiliation, but it was enough to establish accountability. Real consequences came quietly, the kind seniors know are more believable than dramatic punishments. The regional supervisor would be notified. An investigation opened. Sensitivity training mandated. Disciplinary actions taken. No one cheered. No one clapped. Justice isn't a spectacle. It's a correction. And in that moment, the woman's posture shifted. Not triumphant, just steadier. Seen. Respected. Dignified again. Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice. You're safe now, he told her. And he meant it. When the tension finally broke, the room felt lighter, but she still stood rigid, unsure what to do, unsure whether to trust that the moment had truly changed. She gathered her purse with trembling hands, instinctively preparing to leave. Years of being pushed out of spaces had taught her to always exit quietly. Daniel stepped toward her. Please, stay a moment. His voice softened, like he was speaking to the version of her he remembered, the woman who once knelt beside his desk and reminded him he mattered. She looked up at him properly for the first time. His face was older, broader, marked with the lines of a life lived under pressure. Nothing about him seemed familiar, until he spoke again. I'm sorry you had to go through that. You deserved better. You always did. Her eyes narrowed slightly. The phrasing tugged at something in her memory. Not his face. Not his posture. His tone. The sincerity. He hesitated, then added quietly, you used to tell me that. Back when I didn't believe I deserved anything at all. A breath caught in her throat. Daniel, she whispered slowly, the name emerging like a memory brushing dust off itself. He nodded, emotion tightening his jaw. Hi, Miss Carter. Her hand flew to her mouth as tears welled. Not sobbing tears, the kind that come when life unexpectedly hands back something precious you thought you'd lost forever. You, she whispered, shaking her head softly. You grew up. And I never forgot what you did for me, he replied. Not for one day. She reached out and touched his arm, the same way she used to steady him as a child. For a moment, time folded. Teacher and student, both older now, but connected by a bond that had survived miles, years, and silence. Thank you, she whispered. You saved me first, he said. They stood there in the soft hum of the restaurant, two lives that had once crossed in the chaos of childhood now meeting again in the chaos of adulthood. The diners watched quietly, not out of curiosity anymore, but in recognition of something rare, a moment where kindness circled back, decades later, exactly where it was needed. Miss Carter steadied herself, breathing a little easier. "I'm proud of you," she said softly. Daniel smiled, the kind of smile that comes only from old wounds finally feeling understood. "I became who I am because you showed me who I could be." For a moment, the world around them felt still, like justice wasn't just about laws or consequences, but about the unexpected ways life allows people to repay the debts of love and protection that shaped them. As she gathered her things, Daniel walked beside her toward the exit. Not guiding her out, just walking with her. Equal. Protected. Respected. When they reached the door, she paused. "I didn't think anyone noticed me back then," she admitted quietly. Seniors know that feeling, pouring love into the world without ever knowing if it mattered. Daniel shook his head. "I noticed. I remembered. And today? I returned the favor." A small smile lifted the corners of her mouth. "Life is funny, isn't it?" "Life," he replied, "has a way of bringing kindness full circle. And that's the part that stays with you long after the story ends, not the confrontation, not the consequences, but the quiet truth tucked inside it. Sometimes, the child you once protected grows up to stand between you and the world. A reminder that dignity has a way of coming back. And kindness never disappears."